I'd like to have the Memorial Day committee come and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. David, Walt, David, Ken, and whoever that guy is behind you. All rise for the pledge, please. Good evening. I'm Becky Wynn, Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Jerry Wood has an excused absence tonight. First on our agenda is the Public Works Week, and I'll turn that over to Councilmember Eichelhart.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. And we have a lot of activities scheduled for next week as Public Works Week comes along, and I'm going to bring up Mr. Stu Morin, our Director of Environmental Public Works, to tell us about all the activities.
I'll let you see what I'm going to open.
Stu, excuse me.
Yes.
You know, I'm being told what I have to do up here, and I should read the proclamation before we start.
That'll be good.
Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support and understanding of informed citizens is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, streets, public buildings, and solid waste collection, and whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends upon these facilities and services, and whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, is vitally dependent upon the efforts and skills of public works officials, and whereas, I love when lawyers do this, and whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff our public works, environmental, transportation, community development, and building operations departments is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform, and whereas the City of Roswell will observe National Public Works Week with the following events, and I'm going to let you go through the events. Now, therefore, I, Becky Wynn, on behalf of Mayor and City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of May 20th through May 26th as National Public Works Week in the City of Roswell, and I call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with these issues involved in providing our public works and to safety, comfort, and quality of life. Public works creating a lasting impression. Mr. Morin, and I did not list all the activities because I'm sure that you're going to let everybody know what's going on.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. This is an annual opportunity for us to honor the men and women that operate our facilities. And in Roswell, that is the Public Works Environmental Department, the Transportation Department, the Community Development Department, and our building operations staff. And so for the coming week, for next week, those activities will start off on Saturday with a Touch a Truck event. We'll have various forms of equipment that are used to help our citizens have a better understanding, and it's great fun for the children and children of all ages. So we would encourage people to come out on Saturday from 9 until noon right here in the front yard of Roswell City Hall. We also want to celebrate the staff members, and you know that I'm fond of saying what a phenomenal job they do. I hear on a regular basis about the great work of our garbage men and our water supply people, the recycling staff. It's just amazing to me the positive feedback and I'm sure that Steve and Alice can share equally great stories. So we will have a breakfast for the sanitation and garage workers. We will have a luncheon for all of the other staff, but we're going to also have some competitions that you all are all invited to participate in. On Tuesday, we will have the sanitation rodeo, better known as dueling garbage trucks. If you've never seen garbage trucks racing backwards around the circle in front of City Hall, you haven't lived. It's a very interesting situation. On Thursday, we will be having a forklift competition. On Friday, we will have a track hoe competition. You may remember from last year that these big backhoes were having to pick up an egg, move it from one place to another without breaking it, and it's a timed competition. And I'm proud to say that the Public Works and Environmental Department was second place in that competition, but we're hopeful of moving up. The theme, as you mentioned, is Public Works creating a lasting impression. The banner or the poster that has been created by the American Public Works Association celebrates the 75th anniversary of the Golden Gate Bridge as just one of many lasting impressions of Public Works. And finally, let me say a special thanks to Keep Roswell Beautiful, our environmental interest group in the community, and Executive Director Janet Liberman. They provide both financial and moral support to our staff to be able to undertake this event. So I hope all of you can participate and will become more aware of the role of Public Works in your lives.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. I have been a judge the last 2 years. I'm looking forward to doing it again this year. And it's a lot of fun. If y'all want to see it, really, it's a sight to behold. And special thanks to Janet and to Kim Weber, who is the chair of Keep Roswell Beautiful, and Stu, you and your staff. And I'm hoping to see number one this time. Okay. Any other comments?
Count on it. I'm a Cubs fan.
Any other comments? Councilmember Orleans?
Stu, does that mean council members get to drive those trucks backwards?
If you show up with your CDL, we are happy to put you behind the wheel.
Thank you, Mr. Moran.
Thank
Appreciate it. Next on the agenda is the presentation by the 2012 Roswell Memorial Day Committee. And so if they would come up, please. If y'all don't, if you're new to the area, this is something that's been going on, and David Young will tell us how many years. I've been involved in this. Will be my third year. I've probably seen it 8 years now, and it's something that's truly memorable. If y'all can make it, Mr. Young, if you can be the spokesperson.
Mayor Pro Tem, I will. Mayor Pro Tem and Council, we, the Roswell Remembers Memorial Day Committee, would like to thank once again the City of Roswell for your partnership with us for our 15th annual Roswell Remembers Memorial Day ceremony on May the 28th, Monday. And we want to give a special thanks to our hometown sponsors, Carl Black from Carl Black GMC Roswell, Bank of North Georgia, Honey Baked Ham, North Fulton Hospital, and Renaissance Bank. We cherish the relationship that we have with the city in this ceremony because it is the largest in the South and has a great reputation for keeping the ceremony for what it's been always planned for, and that is honoring those who have given the ultimate sacrifice so we can still enjoy the freedoms we do today. We have a very short 5 minutes and 30-second dubbed promo that we do every year, and the very talented Bobby Daniels, my co-chair, has done that for us. If, with your permission, we'd like to show that.
Of course, Bobby, you ready? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roswell Remembers is a collaboration between the City of Roswell and the Roswell Rotary Club.
Welcome to Roswell's Memorial Day celebration. On the last day of May every year, we come here to remember those who have died defending our country and to thank all of those who have served in our military.
May 15th, 1969. I have 8 full helicopters on the way to my triage. I already had 20 on the ground. And our radio squawked, and it gave a tail number I had never heard before from this dust-off pilot. And this is what he said: need immediate permission to land. Had severely wounded civilian baby on board.
I'm going to give him some time to...
Words of my mother, who was a great patriot. And she said to me, send Al and I off to Vietnam. She said, Donna,
Bobby? It's not going to be? Okay. I'm really sorry that you couldn't hear that, because I heard this lady speak. She was a Vietnam triage nurse, and she was going to tell the story about saving a little baby. And you can look it up on the website. It's a very interesting story, and she got to meet her something like 20 years later, and it was a very interesting story. But if y'all can make it to Memorial Day, please come. It's a very touching day. So again, thank you all so much for your contributions to it, and so we're going to keep on moving tonight. So I'm just so sorry you couldn't see that, but please check our website. The next thing up is we're going to do consent agenda. I have a motion from Councilmember Diamond. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Orleans. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Public comment on the consent agenda. Seeing none, all in favor? Passes unanimously. The next on the agenda tonight is the first reading of the budget. I'm going to have Mr. Davidson read the ordinance for the budget.
Thank you. This is an ordinance adopting a budget for the fiscal year 2013 for each fund of the City of Roswell, Georgia, pursuant to Article 6, Chapter 6 of the Charter of the City, beginning July 1st, 2012 and ending June 30th, 2013, appropriating the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the item of anticipated funding sources, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures from exceeding actual funding sources, and amending the Code of Ordinances to effectuate such adoption. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following ordinance. The City of Roswell, Georgia hereby adopts an expenditure budget for fiscal year 2013, said budget being described below and shown on Schedule A for each fund of the City of Roswell, Georgia. General Fund, $59,572,554. Confiscated Assets Fund, $413,493. E911 Fund, $2,067,054. Impact Fee Fund, $128,000. Cemetery Fund, $23,500. Hotel Motel Fund, $1,039,024. Wade Thompson Rental Fund, $73,192. Capital Projects Fund, $7,783,140. Debt Service Fund, $6,502,575. Water and Sewer Fund, $3,353,893. Stormwater Fund, $2,640,301. Solid Waste Fund, $9,807,779. Recreation Participation Fund, $6,484,852. Workers' Compensation Fund, $447,254. Group Benefit Fund, $6,748,527. Risk and Liability Fund, $1,023,722. CDBG Grant Fund, $60,090. Fleet Services Fund, $609,296 for a proposed expenditure budget of $108,778,246. A millage rate of 5.455 mils is hereby established as part of the approved budget based on the estimated digest of Fulton County. The millage rate has a component of 4.059 for the general fund and a 1.396 component for the general obligation bond debt fund. This millage rate may be adjusted at a future date based on receipt of a certified digest. This budget fixes the number of budgeted full-time positions of the city at 594. The Mayor and Council further also adopt a capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2013 through 2017 as attached hereto and incorporated herein as Schedule B. Mayor and Council further approve the reappropriation of all available funds for fiscal year 2012 approved capital projects that have not been completed as of June 30th, 2012. Mayor and Council further approve the reappropriation of $468,000 approved from the FY 2012 for pension plan transition costs. And the City Administrator and his or her designee may promulgate all necessary internal rules, regulations, and policies to ensure that this budget ordinance is followed. They've approved this to be the first reading of the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Mr. Lee, you'd like to make your presentation now?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Good evening, Council. Tonight is the first reading of our FY13 fiscal year 2013 budget. As was indicated in the ordinance, our proposed millage rate associated with this budget is 5.455. The two components would be the maintenance and operation at 4.059 and the debt service is 1.396. This millage rate is consistent with prior fiscal years. Begin my presentation by discussing the general fund and begin with the revenues. Our revenues for FY12, fiscal year 2012, was $57,176,339. This proposed budget has general fund revenues. This is current year revenues of $57,519,522. That's an increase in revenues of $343,183. This table outlines our sources of revenues. Everything above the subtotal line is considered current year revenues. The first column with numbers is FY12 budget revenues. The middle column is the change in revenues as associated with this proposed budget. And then the last column is the proposed revenues for the fiscal year 2013 budget. The subtotal indicates that we have current year revenues of $57,519,522. This budget also proposes a use of reserves of $2,133,624. That's associated with the one-time capital projects funded by the general fund. This particular pie chart identifies our funds in a graphical format. Our largest sources of revenue for the general fund is sales tax, that's the red portion, property tax, that's the blue portion, and business taxes, which is the green portion. All total, our sources of funds for the general fund is $59,653,146. $59,653,146. Moving from revenues to expenditures, our FY12 FY13 budget has a base budget of $52,613,320. We have some new initiatives in this budget for $1,251,244. That includes a 2% merit increase. This funding allows department heads to give between a 1% and 4% raise to employees based on performance, with the average being 2%. A proposed maintenance capital of $3,574,366, and proposed one-time capital of $2,133,624. Total general fund budget of $59,572,554. Those expenditures broken down by departments identified on this chart. The largest sources of expenditures in the general fund is police, rec and parks, and administration. Total general fund expenditures is $59,572,554. As part of this proposed budget, the maintenance capital is $3,574,366. The top three items are associated with citywide activity, vehicle replacement, facility maintenance, as well as computer replacement. The middle items are related to fire department, and then the bottom 5 items are related to rec and parks. This table identifies the various one-time capital projects that are funded through the general fund for this particular budget or proposed budget. ADA compliance, as well as aerial photography for ComDev. Backup repeaters, gun lockers for the fire department at Rapstick. The police department has the next 2 items related to the additional police patrol officers that we're adding in the FY13 budget. The next items are related to recreation. They're park maintenance or park improvements. That is everything from the outdoor security cameras to the recreation center solar lighting panels at the East Roswell Park. The bottom 2 items is related to transportation, funding for Lita Thompson, turn lane, as well as road resurfacing for $1 million. In this proposed budget, 5 items were not funded. 2 positions for transportation identified on the first 2 items. CNG conversion retrofit kits for police, and 2 outdoor equipment for Riverwalk, as well as a Willio Road Bridge replacement. $1,034,150 was not funded as part of this proposed budget. To recap the general fund, we have revenues exceeding expenditures by $80,592. That concludes my presentation on the general fund. I'll give a brief summary of the other funds in this proposed budget. The first set of funds is our special revenue funds: confiscated assets, 911, soil erosion, cemetery care, Lita Thompson, CDBG, and hotel motel. The top portion of this table details the revenue, the bottom portion, the expenditures. In terms of the revenue, you'll find that we have budgeted use of reserves and confiscated assets. That is a tradition for the city of Roswell. We budget prior year revenues for the activities associated with the confiscated asset fund. 911, we have the use of fund balance related to some capital improvements at the 911 center, as well as some maintenance items. We continue to use the funds allocated to the city as we assume the responsibility for the cemetery care fund, and the hotel motel fund has a use of fund balance related to the RBA and capital projects. The next set of funds is our enterprise fund: solid waste, water and sewer, stormwater, and rec and parks. We are proposing to use $1,127,279 of fund balance in the solid waste fund. That's a continuation of our spend down plan of that fund balance as we reduced rates as part of the FY12 budget. Use of reserves in the water fund is maintenance related to the current water plant, and the proceeds from other financing options in Rec and Park is related to the turf fields. Our next set of funds is our internal service funds. The use of, and that's our group benefits, risk and liability, workers' comp, and fleet services. The use of reserves in our group benefits fund is related to our wellness and cost containment initiative, as well as our transition costs for community development outsourcing. capital projects fund and our debt service is the final two categories of funds. Our impact fee fund is $144,000, and our capital project is $7,783,140, and the debt service is related to our one outstanding bond issue. This chart provides a source of all funds for the city. Our largest source of funds for the city is sales tax. Chart is for services and property tax being the bright yellow, charges for services the brown, and sales tax the green. This particular chart breaks our expenditures down by department. Total expenditures across all funds is $108,778,246. Largest departments with expenditure budgets would be police, rec and parks, and administration. That would conclude my presentation on all funds. Wanted to give you a brief update on the digest. I did receive a update from Fulton County on Thursday. The middle portion of this table details the various categories of our digest. The bottom number that's in bold type would tell you the change in our digest. Our FY11 or 2011 column, that's the second column, is the current digest, $4,504,000,000. The preliminary FY12 is $4,519,000,000. That's an increase of $14,667,000, or an increase of 0.33. This budget was predicated on a reduction of 3% in the digest. This is the current add-delete list that we have associated with the proposed budget. There are two items. The sidewalk connectivity, transfer to capital projects, $300,000. And rec and parks facility maintenance for $110,000. Approval of those would increase the general fund budget to $60,063,146 and increase the capital projects budget to $8,083,140. Our next step in this project, or in this proposed budget, is a hearing on May 30th at 7 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
We'll now open up the floor for council to ask questions or have comments. Councilmember Orleans.
Just wanted to bring the attention of council. This is not an add or delete formalized tonight, but something we're looking at for the next reading of the budget, and this is dealing with the Parks and Rec Department and the participation fees, making some adjustments there in the fees, and we're still looking at this, but hopefully we'll increase the fees by $87,000, reducing and shifting that back to the general fund. Excuse me. And then also the other part of it is Mayor was proposing borrowing $1.5 million for some turf fields, and the interest being paid out of this fund, with the reduction of increase in fees of $87,000 being moved into the general fund, with the $80,000 that is available there now, giving us $167,000. We're looking at that as possibly being the method of paying for those bonds. But as I said, we're still looking at this, and so we'll have some final numbers and an idea of what we're doing with the next reading. Just wanted to make you aware of it at this point.
Thank you, Councilmember Orleans. Anyone else? Comments, questions? Councilmember Depolito.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. A couple items. First of all, I will be making a motion to separate the operating and maintenance budget from the capital budget, as we customarily do. So those would be two separate motions. I want to call council's attention and public's attention to Schedule B. There's a couple items in there that I think we need to remove that pertain to the bond project. So if you look at Schedule B, it's the third page, it's the second page with numbers on them. At the bottom of that page, it says programming of general fund balance for potential bond projects. We have not approved the bond projects or the funding mechanism for this. This was included as an informational item, but I think it's potentially confusing that we would be approving the funding for these. So I'd like to remove that from the budget for that reason, and also on the following page where it says potential bond proceeds, for the same reason, just to eliminate any potential confusion with the funding mechanism. And then the third item on that is the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank. That is also tied into a potential bond referendum we're going to have in the future. So just when I make a motion, I will make a motion to remove those items to avoid any confusion. A question for Mr. Lee. We have an addition of, or suggested addition to the maintenance budget of $110,000. I believe we have approximately $80,000 to program. Do you have any suggestions on where the additional $30,000 or so could either be taken from an expense standpoint, or if there are additional revenues we could apply?
From a revenue standpoint, I believe we've conservatively budgeted our sales tax. We've budgeted $19,700,000. Based on current distributions and 2 months remaining in the current year, we project that we'll collect $20,094,000 in the current fiscal year, so we could easily add some additional revenue to the sales tax and still be comfortable with next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Price?
I noticed on two different revenue sources that property tax was a different amount. Can you explain the difference?
Yes, ma'am. For the general fund, that is only the maintenance and operation. When you see it across all funds, that includes the debt service. So we have two components to our millage rate. The 4.059 is related to the general fund. The 1.396 is related to our debt service. So when those two combine, we get the all funds summary of $24,450,800. That includes two separate funds, the debt service as well as the general fund.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from council? Okay, I'm going to open up the public hearing, and before we do that, I'm going to have City Administrator Kay Love read our new procedures as it comes to comments and or questions to City Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. There's a clock on the wall to my right, to your left, that has a 5-minute timer on it. At the podium, you'll see a red, yellow, and green light on the top of there. There's a 2-minute warning, so at the point when you come to the podium, you should have filled out a speaker card that has your name and address. So once you start speaking, to identify yourself, your name, and your address, then the clock will start at that point. When the timer is down to 2 minutes, you will see the yellow light go on at the podium. That's your 2-minute warning. And this is for any presentation that you might have. It's not the going back and forth of questions where Mayor Pro Tem may ask staff to respond to any questions that you pose. We won't be stopping and starting unless Mayor Pro Tem decides for us to stop and start the clock. So you will speak to the Mayor Pro Tem and the council about whatever the issue is, make your presentation. During that time, you have up to the 5 minutes, and at that point, she will call on the appropriate staff person for any answering of questions or further discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Love. I am going to strictly adhere to the 5 minutes because we do have a long agenda tonight. I will not be interrupting. You have your full 5 minutes, and if there's any questions, I will have staff answer after your 5-minute presentation. So, Janet, Ms. Russell, please state your. Well, you know the.
Collecting these, or we're
If you can leave it. You can leave it at the podium right there, and staff will collect.
And you know the general name and address.
Yes, I do. Janet Russell, 260 Willow Springs Drive, Roswell. Two questions concerning this budget. First, the 2% merit raise. I think that perhaps the people that make like $90,000 and above with the city ought to forego the 2% merit raise. They already make enough money. You ought to take the total amount that would be paid to those upper-level management people and department heads and redistribute it to your lower-level employees, because 2% when you're making $150,000 is an awful lot more than when you're making $30,000. The majority of the employees in the city of Roswell who are in the lower income brackets can't afford to live in this city. Therefore, they're getting the double whammy because they have to drive extra far to come here. And with gas very expensive, you're really putting it to them. So I think that the upper-level management people ought to forego it, figure out how much money they would get, and redistribute it to your lower-level employees. Secondly, I'm concerned, Mr. Orleans, what you just talked about. There's going to be an increase in Rec and Park revenue from fees, but instead of it going back to Rec and Parks, it's going into our general fund. I didn't think that Rec and Parks was the piggy bank for the general fund. Did I misunderstand you? You can answer when my 5 minutes are up. Thank you. I know how to hold the rules. Thirdly, we have a large portion of our income from a hotel-motel tax. I brought this up once before, and I've not seen any action on it from the city. I reminded you that any time someone makes a hotel reservation online, the city of Roswell does not get the hotel-motel tax. You have to call directly to the hotel so the Convention and Visitors Bureau can take advantage of that. I haven't seen any action proactively for the city to inform either business owners or people that live here that they should call the hotels. The Bragg has made that point because I pushed it, that when you call and make a reservation, you call the hotel, because that way the money stays in the city. And if that's going to be part of our source of revenue, you need to get a little proactive on that. And finally, it was brought to my attention that those of us who live within the city center of Roswell, who get our water from the city of Roswell, unlike the other 22,000 households in Roswell that get it from Fulton County, we've been overcharged for our water bill for about 4 years, and I'd like to know why. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Councilmember Orleans, would you like to clarify your statement?
Ms. Russell, what it is the general fund has money going to the participation fee fund in Parks and Rec. And with the agreement of certain goals in the participation fee fund, they will have an additional revenue, so will not need as much revenue coming over from the general fund. So basically it's leaving money in the general fund that would have been coming over to subsidize part of the fees. If that makes sense. I'll be happy to talk to you about it.
And Ms. Russell, on the water, since that's what I'm going to have to do is have Mr. Moore get in contact with you so you can talk one-on-one on the concern about being overcharged for water for 4 years. So I'll ask Mr. Moore to make sure that he contacts you on that issue. Next person like to speak?
What about the hotel-motel tax? And the 2% merit?
That's something that the council, I'm sure that Councilmember Depolito, who is in charge of administration and finance, took that all into account. Thank you for bringing those up to us. Mr. Fleck.
Lee Fleck, Martin's Landing. Again, I noted, please, can you hook me up and stop the clock? Why isn't that shown? Thank you. Mr. Lee, you indicated that you're staying with your 3% decline in property tax, even though I provided you and the city with the Fulton County most current assessment of property tax, which shows that the values, the property tax revenue can be anticipated to be reduced by 6.4, almost 6.5%. I'd like to explain why you're basically overstating revenues by some $1 million by not using Fulton County, who is the authority on property tax values. The next question I want answered is questions I posed to you via email twice and have not received a response. I would like to know where the $2.3 million that was in last year's budget for East Roswell's Fire Station number 4, $800,000 in capital and 1.5 allocated through impact fees verbally at this last year's second reading. And I would like to know why we continue to overcharge for solid waste. Over and above the $1.6 million that you're required to maintain in the solid waste fund, in 2012 you had $4.9 million in excess. This year you're projecting $5.2 million in excess. All excesses come from one place and one place only, and that's excessive overcharging. I think that when you realize that those additional $5.2 million, you could actually give everybody in this city free trash pickup for 6 months, is something you should consider. You need to cut back those fees. There's no justification whatsoever to be holding $5 million in solid waste reserves when, in fact, your capital budget, you're only going to spend $500,000. Makes no sense to be holding and that $500,000 is within the $1.6 million of your required reserves. Now to the participation fund. The $80-some-odd thousand that you were talking about increasing fees to participants is to cover assets. I totally disagree with that. Scoreboards, wall mats, air conditioner, fitness equipment, sound equipment, tables and chairs. You're going to increase fees by $80,000, yet your own projections, revenue versus expenses for the entire participatory recreational department shows a favorable variance of $750,000. There's absolutely no justification to be increasing your fees when you already have projected $750,000 in excess reserves. I would like to know why, in God's name, is the fire station, the fire department, paying for gun lockers? This should be in your police department budget. There's no justification whatsoever. Again, like you did a couple of years ago, you put police department expenses in the fire department. And other than that, for the people that are here, so you know what this meeting costs the public, we currently pay our elected officials $240,000 a year. The requirement is for city council meetings. That amounts to $7,000 for this meeting tonight for these elected officials. One of them doesn't happen to be here. He's the mayor. That's $1,000 a head. I think you have the right to hold these people to a much higher standard than was seen last year in the comprehensive financial budget. $1 million, they've overstated budget, and that's to cover the 2% merit raise. It is not a merit raise, it's a cost of living across the board increase. I kind of agree with Janet that that is unacceptable for those at the higher level. I think, as I've recommended before, you should put that in the kitty, and everybody should get an equal amount.
Thank you, Mr. Fleck. I'm going to let City Administrator Kay Love and Mr. Lee, whichever ones that you'd like to start with first, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Fleck, I might not go in order, but we'll try to catch the questions that you had. Some of the information we might have to send to you via email, and we're certainly happy to meet with you one-on-one to talk about any questions that you have about the budget as we have in years past. Gun lockers, those are gun lockers at Rapstick. The reason it's in the fire department budget and not the police department is the fire department is in charge of managing Rapstick. So that's why it's in that budget. The Public Safety Committee made up of representatives from Alpharetta, our partner in that facility, and Roswell, actually met last year and determined that was an expenditure that needed to happen. Alpharetta shares in that expenditure with us, so we share in that cost. So that's why it's in the fire department budget. I'm sorry, Roswell Area Public Safety Training Center. It's the training center that the city of Roswell and Alpharetta partnered on, where all of our public safety officials are trained, as well as people from other jurisdictions come there. Related to the merit increase, that is a 2% average. It is not a COLA. A cost of living is typically across the board without respect to performance. These raises that will be given, any of them will be given based upon a performance evaluation and merit. It's up to the mayor and council as to how that gets administered, related to any suggestions that are made, like what Ms. Russell suggested. The Fulton County numbers, Keith, I'll let you speak to that in just a second, related to the latest information that we got. And solid waste, Mr. Fleck, that fund balance has grown over the years. We are on a pay-as-you-go related to the capital equipment. Typically, we buy one front-end loader and one rear-end loader per year. There were several years where we did not buy any equipment, so we got caught up. If you recall, when we implemented the stormwater utility, we had a planned spend down of fund balance on the solid waste side of the house. We reduced by one ERU equivalent per household to help fund the stormwater utility. So there is a drawdown of that fund balance, intentional use each year. So that fund balance is sitting there now, and Mr. Lee can provide you via email our projections on where that fund balance will wind up over the next few years, based on the current rates being the same and our stormwater utility rates being the same. So there's no overcharging for that service going on. The rec participation fund numbers that you have, I didn't quite catch that spreadsheet that you had with the $700,000. I believe that is a spreadsheet that Recreation and Parks has developed based on the 2013 year for program. All expenditures are not in there, so fees are not being raised to cover any capital assets. So that's not an accurate portrayal of why any fees are being raised at all. It is to cover those program costs and associated personnel costs. Mr. Lee, do you want to address Fulton County assessment numbers, please?
Yes, ma'am, I'll be glad to. On Thursday, I received preliminary numbers from Fulton County. These numbers remain preliminary until they have submitted those numbers to the tax commissioner. This particular sheet is the consolidation and evaluation of our digest. I'm going to zoom to the area that's of concern related to our total digest. If it will focus. This is from Fulton County. The number is $4,519,000,000. Our FY11 digest was $4,504,000,000. We have an increase in this year's digest, not a decline. These numbers are from Fulton County. I did not create these numbers. There were a couple of other items related to the elected officials. Those numbers include the judge's salary as well as the mayor and council. And the fire station continues to be funded in the capital projects fund. It is not related to any reserve funds that we have in the general fund or an increase in reserve funds projection. But the digest based on Fulton County has increased, not decreased.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Any other public comments or questions? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Martin Howe from 130 Vickery Lane. in Roswell, Georgia. I've got a couple comments and questions about the budget presentation, if you'll indulge me, please. Overall, I thought it was a very detailed budget, very impressive, a lot of work. In preparation for this, I read the previous budgets from Sandy Springs and Roswell and Alpharetta, and I thought you guys did a good job of pulling this together. I also have 25 years of cost accounting and financial responsibility, P&L responsibility, so I thought it was a pretty good effort. Thank you for that. I've got a couple general recommendations based on my experience. Recommendation 1 is ensure that all graphs and data are meaningful and teach us something. Example, page 17, there's a graph that talks about full-time employees per 1,000 residents, which I assume wants to talk about how many people. We have 600 people in Roswell, and how do we compare that to Sandy Springs or Alpharetta or Johns Creek? That's an irrelevant comparison because each city outsources a certain amount of things. This city has chosen to outsource, I think, 2 departments, and some of the earlier or the newer North Fulton cities outsource everything at first, now something else. So my point just being, let's have a relevant statistic, Ms. Love, with respect to comparing us, like maybe the total cost of the department, whether it's outsourced or insourced, total cost of, let's say, code enforcement per 1,000 people. That'd be a relevant stat for us to look at when we compare ourselves to some of the cities that we like. Okay? Recommendation 2, edit all staffing charts to show actual number of positions for history, not just approved. So if you look at the charts that we have that talk about staffing, it says approved position. And as we all know from our federal government, what's approved is not necessarily what's actual. So we should actually look at actual 2012 staffing positions. When we look at 2013 budget, we should know where we actually were in 2012, not just what we had approved, because we may have in, let's say, the billing department or the admin department some unfilled positions. So we just want to make sure we're looking at actual versus what our budget is. Number 3, I want to make sure that we add all fund and account detail. All fund and account details should include a column for last year actual, which right now is 2012 estimated and annualized. Because the year is not over, we don't quite know where we're going to end up in 2012, but what we have on most of these reports is 2011 actual and 2012 proposed or 2012 budgeted. So for those of us looking at the 2013 budget and trying to figure out is that legitimate or not, the last actual number we have is 2011. So I think we're 10 months into 2012. We ought to have a 2012 number. Many of the reports in this program have that, but as many do not. So we'd like to really see that across the board, that we get to see where we stand at the time that we're building the 2013 budget. Where do we stand from the previous year? I'd like to see that as a rule, that all the reports have that. And lastly, many of the departmental and the financial summaries have KPIs, which here are called outcome measures, which are the measures that department success is measured by. And these are very, very weak from a business perspective. We really need to have true financial and fiscal objective measures for all the departments. For example, the strategic planning and budget program, their measure is the percent of times that they win the GFOA award, when really we should be talking about financial issues. When it comes to the police department, it's the number of people, the number of investigations. When it comes to the jail, it's the number of people that are housed in the jail. So the more people that are housed in the jail, the better they do on their measure. So we really need to come up with KPIs that are business-centric, that are financial-centric, so that we can look at maximizing the efficiency of our spend versus the outcome that you guys want. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Okay, anybody else would like to speak on the budget? Again, this is the first reading. Thank you, Mr. Howell. This is the first reading. Our next reading will be May 30. Any other? I'm going to keep it open for just a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close public hearing. I'm now going to open up the questions and comments from council. Councilmember Price.
Thank you. I know that we've had some new changes recently in security in the building, and I know that it'll be on our agenda at committee tomorrow for further discussion as to how permanent or what needs will be brought in on a permanent basis. So I was wondering where that appears in this budget, or will we expect more additions to the budget in the ensuing weeks?
Ms. Love?
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Price, there is nothing predicated in this budget related to the security pending the guidance that we get from the committee tomorrow. So there is information in your committee packet about what the estimated cost on an annual basis would be, so that would be a necessary change to the budget for a permanent solution to security.
Any other questions, comments? And then we'll turn over to Councilmember Depolito to make a motion. And this is just on the general fund, am I correct? First
It's
motion.
on the operating and maintenance budget.
Exactly. Okay. Operating and maintenance. O&M. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the members of the public for your comments. And we'll take those into consideration as we move forward over the next couple of weeks. For tonight, I would like to approve the first reading of the operating and maintenance portion of the budget as proposed, with the exceptions of removing Schedule B, which is the capital improvement program, adding $110,000 for park maintenance, and increasing the sales tax revenue in order to provide the balanced budget, as explained by Mr. Lee, with the additional revenue he is confident we have, given the latest information.
That's
my
it?
motion.
Okay. Do I have a second? Councilmember Diamond, is there any other questions or comments from council? Okay, all in favor of the motion for the O&M with the exceptions that Councilmember Depolito made? All in favor? Passes unanimously. Okay, Councilmember Depolito.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I now would like to move to approve the Schedule B capital improvement program as presented, with the following changes: removal of the section entitled Programming of General Fund Fund Balance for Potential Bond Projects, removal of the section entitled Potential Bond Proceeds, removal of the section entitled Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank, and the addition of sidewalk connectivity capital projects in the amount of $300,000.
Do I have a second to that motion? I'm sorry, Councilmember Orleans has seconded. Any other questions or comments on the capital funding budget? Councilmember Price.
Yeah, just regarding the sidewalk connectivity, this was in the Transportation Department, which we will have on the agenda for Community Development and Transportation meeting later this month. So this may be premature or may need to be altered significantly, but as a placeholder, I would accept this, but I think that once we discuss this in our committee, that this may be different.
So noted. Is there any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Okay, we are now going to move on to the adoption of the millage rate first reading. Mr. Davidson, could you read the ordinance, please?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to adopt the millage rate. Now therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Roswell wish to establish a millage rate of 5.455. The millage rate has a component of 4.059 for the general fund operating and capital improvements budget and a 1.396 mils component for servicing bonded indebtedness. The millage rate may require adjustment upon approval of a certified tax digest for the year 2012. And if approved, this will be the first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Do I have any questions or comments from council? Hearing none, I'm now opening up to the public. Is there anyone in the public that would like to comment and or have questions on our millage rate? Mr. Howe?
Quick question on...
I need you on microphone, and we're going to have to do the same thing. You have to state your name and address for us.
Martin
again.
Howe, 130 Vickery Lane. In the proposed 2013 budget meeting 12312, there was a pro forma 2012 to fiscal year 2016, which indicated for this year, fiscal year 2013, that the M&O millage would increase from 4.059 to 4.395, and the debt service millage would decrease from 1.396 to 1.060. I think what you just said is that's not the case. That's been changed since January 23rd.
Okay, I'm going to have Mr. Lee answer that question. I'm sorry, is that the only question you have, Mr. Howe?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lee?
Thank you, ma'am. The January 23rd presentation of the pro forma was a snapshot as we began developing our expenditure budget. There was an anticipation to move millage from debt to M&O. As we worked through this budget and identified savings and revenues from sources such as sales tax, there was not a need to move the millage rate in this fiscal year. In future years, items such as House Bill 386, which is having a significant impact on our revenues, the move of that millage rate will be more likely.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Mr. Howe? Okay, thank you. Mr. Fleck?
Can we turn that on?
Okay, before we start, make sure that Mr.
Yeah, Lee Fleck, Martin's Landing. First of all, I'd like to, can we shrink that now? This is what Martin was referring to with the reduction in the debt service over time. As the millage rate is maintained, we all know, some of us know what that's all about. It's nothing more than what you're going to do when you retire the existing bond and replace it with the new bond. At any rate, I still did not receive an answer to my question earlier about the $2.3 million for the fire station number 4. And as far as pay down on the solid waste, I disagree with you, Ms. Love, when there's an increase from last year to this year. That's not going down, that's going up to the tune of $400,000. So I disagree with that, your response. Okay, and I still expect a response for what happened to the $2.3 million.
Mr. Fleck, right now we're on the millage rates. Please put all your comments to the millage rate.
Very well. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that you didn't answer my questions. Okay, so what Keith Lee is indicating is that the possibility of pay down of that millage rate rolling over into the general fund with time, as you stated in January, you were going to adjust the millage rate, service rate, begin to adjust the millage rate as a result of the bond payoff. So you say that's not happening this year, and you're maintaining the same millage rate that you had last year of 1.396 here. Is that correct?
That's what
Okay.
Mr. Fleck, we'll have the questions answered after you've made your statement.
I'm done. Thank you.
Mr. Lee, would you like to comment on that, please?
Thank you, ma'am. This millage ordinance proposes our millage rate to be 5.455. That has two components, our M&O at 4.059 and our debt at 1.396. That is consistent with prior year millage as well as what we are proposing in this budget.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Ms. Love, I thought we had answered the question on the fire station. Would you like to try it one more time for me?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Fleck, the money for the fire station hasn't gone anywhere. There is some existing money that was funded a couple of budget years ago to get us started in embarking upon design of a fire station. There is money in impact fees budgeted, and then there's an additional amount that is in the proposed bond projects at the point that the city could issue bonds. The mayor and council decide to call for a referendum. Then there is some funding to augment or supplement the amount of money that has already been budgeted. So there's no new money as far as in the one-time capital that you're seeing in this budget. But what we had already budgeted has not gone anywhere. It's still out there in a capital project for fire station number 4, and Mr. Lee can email you that breakdown of how much was budgeted, what amount has been spent to date related to looking at various sites and concepts, and then what's the balance left, and then what's proposed for the bond issue.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else would like to speak on the millage rate? I'm closing public hearing. Councilmember DiPolito.
I move that we approve the millage rate of 5.455 mils for the fiscal year 2013 budget.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Eichelhart. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Again, to the public, the second hearing on the budget and the millage rate will be May 30. Okay, we're now going to move on to community development, and I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Nancy Diamond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. We are addressing CU 1201, 720 Grimes Bridge Road, the Cottage School, land lot 498, and I believe Jackie Dybel is presenting.
This is CU, conditional use 12-01, 720 Grimes Bridge Road.
Ms. Dybel, could you get the microphone just a little bit closer for us, please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. This is 720 Grimes Bridge Road, the Cottage School, conditional use 12-01. The applicant is requesting a conditional use to allow for educational and office space and training to be located at the house at 720 Grimes Bridge Road. To the north of the property is zoned R1 and single-family home. South of the property is the Cottage School, also zoned R1. To the east is a single-family home and the Cottage School, zoned R1. And to the west of the property is a single-family home, zoned R1. Here's a current location of the site plan. The property in red is the house under consideration this evening. The Planning Commission recommended approval during their April 17th, 2012 hearing with 4 conditions. And the Community Development staff recommends approval of the conditional use with the 4 conditions. These are the conditions that the staff recommended and the Planning Commission recommended during their April meeting. The hours of operation shall be Monday through Friday from 8 to 4. The maximum number of clients at one time at the house shall be 6. There shall be no more than 4 cars parked in the driveway at the house. And the applicant shall install a barrier-type fence of some type along the property line to the end of the shop indicated on the survey submitted on January 17, 2012. That concludes the presentation. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Ms. Dybel? Councilmember Eichelhart.
Thank you, ma'am. Reading through the minutes, and I may get into this more when we hear from applicants and others, but number 4 on the conditions is a barrier fence of some type. yet there was a lot of discussion about what that could be. Isn't that pretty wide open? And something else we've had, you could have like a 2-inch little thing, and that technically would be a barrier fence of some type. So are there elements to that to deal with that more precisely?
Currently out there on the site, when I was out there, there's like some posts and string that gives the definition of the property. What we were looking for is a fence, maybe chain link, black. That's what staff was looking for. We were hoping to get some type of agreement with what the applicant would like, but we didn't need to have anything elaborate. We were looking for something simple that the cottage school would agree to.
Any other questions? Councilmember DePolito.
Thank you, Madam. As a follow-up to that, I guess it's important to understand what the intent of the fence is. If it's to provide some sort of screening for the adjacent property, I would expect it to be either landscaping or some sort of a privacy fence. And typically, what we like to do with conditions like this is to have an approval by the design review board. Is this required to go in front of the design review board for final approval, or?
It is a private school, so yes, that is something that would be required to go to the design review board.
So this would have to go in front of the design review board?
Only for the fence.
For final approval, only for the fence?
Yes.
Unless we have that approved by the staff?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, thank you, Jackie. We will now hear from the applicant. Is the applicant here? Please state your name and your address, and since you're not one thing one of the owners, if you would state your position with the school also, or your position.
My name is Lynn Haas. I'm the Capstone Program Director at the Cottage School of 700 Grimes Bridge Road. Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members, thank you for the opportunity for us to present our petition for the conditional use permit for 720 Grimes Bridge Road. We appreciate the support and guidance we have received from staff throughout this process. The Cottage School has been a part of the Roswell community since 1985, and we have been located at 700 Grimes Bridge Road since 1987. We believe we have conducted ourselves in such a manner over the past 27 years so as to have secured your confidence in our ability to fulfill the mission of our program while having little to no adverse impact on the neighborhood for which we are a part. We have come before you this evening to request your approval for the conditional use permit for 720 Grimes Bridge Road. The purpose for this request would be to allow the Cottage School to house a relatively new program, Capstone, which is aimed at providing career development support to young adults that have graduated from high school, approximately ages 18 to 25, but who require additional support in the form of career assessment and job readiness skills development. The location would be utilized in an office-like capacity and would serve a limited number of clients at any one time. Our program provides work training in the areas of clerical, janitorial, and landscaping. We provide vocational assessments using work keys and other assessment tools. We have a strict policy and procedure manual outlining the clients we accept into our program, as well as our rules for the program. As a private service provider, we have the flexibility to pre-screen our clients. We do not accept any clients that have criminal backgrounds nor are deemed unstable. Vocational rehabilitation requires all clients to be mentally, physically, and emotionally stable for 6 months prior to entering into training. We accept clients that are similar to our school student body, and the type of training we provide requires a higher level of functioning than other programs VR uses for training and assessment purposes. We aim to create an environment that prepares these young adults to work in the Roswell community. The clients participating in the landscape training will only help to increase property value as they beautify the surroundings of the home. Our clients are all adults and are not permitted to smoke or use chewless tobacco or any other substances while on the property. There is no reason for our clients to be outside of the home unless they're working in the lawn care division or they're coming in or out of their cars to go to services. The clients are in a highly structured training program and will not cause disturbances to the community. Many of our clients are unable to drive and therefore will be dropped off and picked up at the home. However, we have made the drop-off and pickup times after rush hour in the morning and before rush hour in the afternoon so as to not impede traffic flow or increase traffic for the neighbors. While staff has included some conditions in their recommendation for approval of our petition, we would ask that you consider the following minor modifications to these conditions. 1, the staff has recommended that the cottage school be limited to serving no more than 6 clients at any one time. We would request that you consider expanding that number to no more than 12 clients at any one time. Some of the services that we offer do not take the entire day. Therefore, if we had 6 in the training program and 1 more wanted to come for an assessment, they would not be able to utilize that service. And some of our clients are in services for 3 to 6 months in training, so we would potentially be putting off a client 6 months for them to just have an evaluation. Given the size of the home, we feel that 12 will fit safely. We will set up 1 room for assessments, 1 room for clerical training, and 1 room for job readiness training. And each of these rooms has the square footage to hold at least 3 people working at individual desks comfortably, if not more. The staff has recommended that the cottage school be limited to no more than 4 cars parked on that campus at any one time. We would request that you consider expanding that number to no more than 6 vehicles at any one time. We can park 2 in the carport as you go up the driveway and then this way, then 2 on the landing outside, and then there's a separate driveway that comes off the original driveway and goes to the other side of the house where there are some garages that we could put 2 cars, which would not be impacting anyone getting in or out of the home. We have 2 staff members in addition to myself, so limiting 4 cars would only allow 1 client to drive to the program. The staff has recommended that the cottage school hours of operations be limited to 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. We would request that you consider expanding the hours of operation from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with clients being served between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. and the additional hour prior to and following be used for faculty and office administrative functions, allowing staff the opportunity to prepare for the day or to prepare for the next date, as well as holding supervisory meetings, which I would need to conduct after program hours with my staff. As previously stated, the cottage school has been part of the Roswell community for over 27 years, and during that time we believe we have been a positive and productive members of the community and have conducted ourselves in a manner that enabled us to carry out the mission of the school while maintaining sensitivity to the privacy and quality of life of our neighbors. Should the City Council reach a favorable decision regarding our petition this evening, you have our assurance that the same commitment to privacy and quality of life will be maintained.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on just a moment. Does
Yes, ma'am.
council have any questions for the applicants or comments? Councilmember Price.
Regarding condition number 4, can you show exactly where that fence would be constructed?
I believe they want it along the property lines.
All property lines? Because that
If you look on this, looking on the screen, it's that this location, this is the shed we're identifying. This is along the southern property line of this residence, but northern property line of the school at this location.
Where's the, back to that please, where is that, where the red structure is? Does that property line not go all the way down on the other side of it?
No, it only goes halfway down to here. This is owned by the school.
Okay, that's all one property. That's all one parcel.
That's
okay.
all ownership.
So the fence is going to go behind the adjacent home.
Right. The adjacent home is located up here in this location. The fence would be in this area.
So really that red rectangle doesn't mean anything.
That was a prior ownership right before this. That's what this homeowner owned at the time when the school bought all of the property. And they purchased half of the property from this house. So they have this common.
So that's all considered one parcel now, or?
Under one ownership.
Under one ownership, okay. Is that fence being requested by the neighbor, or?
Requested by staff. because of the delineation between the properties is not very clear.
What about the side demarcation?
There's been discussions by the adjacent property owner of requesting some barrier between. This is their driveway as it comes up, so this is their common property line. There's been some discussions by this homeowner that I'm sure they'll discuss this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the applicant? Councilmember Orleans?
Question on, talking about the maximum number of clients at one time at the house being 6, 10, 12. Are your clients at the house every day from the 9 to 4 period of time?
The ones who are participating in
I can't hear you. Can you speak in the mic?
The ones who are participating in the janitorial, the clerical, or the landscaping or lawn care, they would be there from 9 to 3:30. So they would be there for almost the entire portion of the day.
Maybe staff can answer this because the condition says number of clients. So I guess if what you were saying, if you have the 6 clients in the house and you have somebody that's coming for an evaluation, I don't know if that would be defined as a current client or not. Maybe staff needs to answer that. So I guess I'm just trying to get to the point of what numbers you really need and need to function. So can you comment on it? And then maybe staff can comment on it after you do.
Okay.
We would probably make the determination if it was a fully enrolled client that would be the determination as to the number limiting of 6.
So would that definition then solve your question about the numbers of people coming in for evaluation on top of your 6 actual clients?
Yes, it would. We would still like to have a little leeway, though, in case we had like one extra person and we didn't want to put them off for 6 months. Like if they were, we get some clients who are juniors in high school that come in for an evaluation for 2 weeks over the summer, and then that way they can have a work plan created by vocational rehabilitation in the fall before they graduate, which is deemed by the federal government that they must have a work plan in place before they graduate. So if we had our 6 who had already graduated and were going through, and we had one who needed a 2-week evaluation, they would fit in the all-day category, so then they wouldn't be allowed to come.
But it may not be 12 on top of over the 6.
No.
It's a question for Councilman Diamond. Next question is, again, back to staff. In interpreting these conditions, it says the hours of operation, 8 to 4, and again, hours of operation mean business operating with clients there versus someone such as one person still being there until 5 or even 5:30. I mean, I don't want to get into an issue where we've got code enforcement going out because somebody's there 15 minutes after. Again, what is staff's interpretation of how that would be viewed?
We determined that the utilization of the words hours of operation would be when the clients as well as the staff are fully there engaged in the teaching and the learning part of what's going on in the house.
And if a staff person is there by themselves after the 4 o'clock period of time, that would not...
There wouldn't be an issue for us. I mean, staff was looking at providing some type of guidelines that this home would be not in excess of what a normal home with 4 kids or children would be.
Right. And that's what I thought, and that's what I was trying to get to explain to you on some of these conditions. Maybe it's understanding how the conditions are going to be interpreted and how they're used.
Right.
I mean, even a single-family home would have 1 person or 2 people there into the evening living. So, I mean, there is some flexibility to this, just trying to get you to understand and everybody understand how the conditions would be viewed and interpreted.
We just wanted to make sure that we were in compliance if we were granted permission. We didn't want to break any rules like the first week.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Diamond.
Ms. Haas, I want to clarify this maximum clients. I guess
I'd be more comfortable, and I'm guessing staff might be, for keeping up with this. It's really the number of people in the building. So how can we, when you say 6 and you might need one more, how do we get to 12? Is that including staff? What's the total number of people you see in the building at one time?
Well, I could see like between 6 and 8 doing full services for the day, but we might have 3 or 4 people who need to come over and have an assessment, and we would assess them all at the same time because they're paper and pen assessments. So it would be like 4 people in the assessment room kind of sitting around a conference table. But that would put us at 10, and we would be over at that point.
And how many staff people would be there?
3 that are full-time staff that would be there, and then myself if I came in or out. Because I'm housed at 700 Grimes Bridge, but I'm the supervisor for all the employees that would be at 720.
I'm guessing the issue is going to be more about how many bodies are coming and going than it is whether they're clients or staff or who they are. So if we can get, so you're thinking 12? Did I hear 13 or what?
No, 12 would
Okay,
be
12
like
would
the
be
cap of all
everybody.
people within the home at one time.
Okay, thank you.
And to clarify that, maybe you just want to include maximum number of clients and staff at whatever number you feel would be appropriate.
Any other questions of applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, for anyone who wants to speak either for this or in opposition, we do have the 5-minute time limit. And if there is a rebuttal from the applicant, they will also be limited to 5 minutes on the rebuttal time. And what I'm going to do first is anyone who is association or directly affected by this application will come first, and anyone else can come after that. So who would like to speak on this? I'm going to let Mr. Honeycutt, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, he's a neighbor. You're the gentleman that lives right next to it.
Correct.
Okay, what I need for you, sir, is your name and address, and then you have 5 minutes to speak your case.
Okay, my name is Paul Honeycutt, and I'm at 730 Grimes Bridge Road. And we would be impacted directly by this proposal and conditional use of this property. We were adamantly against this from the very beginning. And this driveway that accesses 720 runs right up against our property. It's very close, and so that the number of cars were very much an issue with us. And I think the idea was to interface this property in a residential kind of manner, and 4 cars I can see possibly. It seems a bit much to me, but 6 I think is off the mark. As far as the clients that are going to be attending the school, I find the information to be somewhat confusing, because the idea is that there are going to be clients inside the house, and they're going to be clients outside the house if they're doing landscaping type educational skills. That's a problem with me. It almost is not really an issue so much because it doesn't seem enforceable one way or the other, whether they use tobacco or what have you. I don't see how that could be enforced. But the other thing, so I would prefer that the conditions that were set in place by Mr. Townsend and Ms. Dibble were kept in place. From my standpoint, because of the traffic and extra cars. And the other thing is the fence to the back of the property seems real arbitrary, the definition of what the fence is. I really don't care. I'm not really concerned about that fence. What I am concerned about is students coming onto our property in the back. And I feel like if there was a well-defined barrier of some kind that could be observed by the students, I think that would eliminate most, if not all, of the trespassing. Our real issue is with their garage, which directly faces our property. The side of their house is turned such a way that it's angled actually toward the living, for the most part, where we see out from our house. So what I would prefer is that they put some barrier right there at the apron of the garage, so that we're not looking right into their garage where all this activity is coming forth back and forth. Fence, we suggested a green hedge of some kind that was disputed, and that's fine. I mean, I don't expect them. I expected them to dispute it, but what we're asking, I don't think, is a lot, because what you have is a business, and it's in a residential area, and so I think that this would be a minimum, really, for establishing a barrier between a business and a private residence. So I think that's really all I got to say. I would just prefer that the conditions be observed that were established by planning and zoning, and that. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Honeycutt. Anyone else that's... yes, Mr. Honeycutt, before you sit... Well, since you sat down, if we can get you back up. Sure. I'm going to allow council to ask any questions of you, any comments, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Councilmember Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Honeycutt. Do you have... I think we had talked about a fence on the southern end specifically to address the kids who might mistake your property for the school property.
Right.
Do you have something in mind? I mean, I realize that really isn't part of this application, but this is probably a good opportunity to ask for that. I mean, if you have something in mind that you would like to see, that you would prefer, we're certainly up for entertaining that. Do you prefer a wood fence? Do you prefer something more natural?
Actually, our property at that part of the on that line is probably the main barrier. Their property is pretty much developed right up to that line, but I think what I would like to see would be a possibly a fence with a rail fence, possibly. A rail fence would be acceptable. I'm not into putting up some kind of wall or whatever. I mean, I like the aesthetic of the woods, and I'm not really looking for that so much as I'm just looking for, the line to be acknowledged and respected.
And I think that makes perfect sense, being as wooded as your property is. And about the property in between the two homes, to screen that a little bit, I know we talked about green hedge, but that would require removing some trees. Would a fence be more palatable? Would you favor moving the trees to do this?
I think a fence, I would prefer a hedge of some kind there. I realize it is It's wooded there. I would prefer that, but if that's not feasible, I would prefer a fence, because I realize that where their property impacts ours, there's really, it's inches, actually, where their driveway comes in contact or near contact with our property. So there would be enough room for a fence of some kind of barrier there. It would be impossible, actually, for them to put a type of, green not bald cypress, but the Leyland cypress there. I think we preferred the length of the driveway, the cypress, but for us to feel any real sense of give and take, I think a fence right there at the garage, the apron, where the apron is of the garage, would be, my request.
Thank you, Mr. Honeycutt.
Okay.
Anyone else that's directly affected by this property wants to speak? Okay, then I'm going to turn to Mr. Howell. Again, name and address, please.
Martin Howe, 130 Victory Lane, Roswell. We are a direct neighbor of the Cottage School, directly to the east. My neighborhood. I didn't plan on speaking, but I'd like to make a few comments, especially in lieu of Mr. Honeycutt's statements. We are happy and pretty satisfied that we are in between two schools in Roswell that offer special programs. The Swift School to our east and the Cottage School to our west. We are very thankful for these private schools that do a fantastic job for the students. They're not a burden on our neighborhoods. They integrate very well. We see the kids running up and down the street. The Cottage School has older children, and they jog and they run and they clean up. So we're very, very happy to have them. I represent 3 neighborhoods, 2 to the east and 1 to the west of both the Cottage School and the Swift School, and we unequivocally support what these guys do. Generally, taking a house that they bought and turning it into a program to do good for the neighborhood is a fantastic idea, and we fully support that. But listening to Mr. Honeycutt, who is a direct neighbor of them, I just wonder if there's a way to appease him such that there can be a barrier there between his house and this property. Maybe there's not room for Leland cypresses or something like that, but maybe something we can do is cut the driveway off. I don't know why the house would need a driveway over to Grimes Bridge. Maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe the house could be connected to the rest of the Cottage School by all of the property at the Cottage School. Maybe they cut a driveway over to the east, and so then he doesn't have that meandering driveway, which is, a couple hundred feet down to, up to Grimes Bridge Road. So the neighborhood supports this school. The neighborhood supports the effort of this school to build a program that's going to help human beings in Roswell and Fulton County. But we definitely want to be sensitive to the direct neighbor to the west, and hopefully they can work something out where he is able to maintain the privacy that he wants, and the school is able to continue to service the neighborhood and the larger regional area as it sees fit. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howe. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on this application? Okay, then I'm going to turn it back. Are you with the applicant? Okay, because I was going to say the next one would be the applicant can do her rebuttal if she wants, but if you're speaking. Okay. Come and state your name and address, please. And make sure anybody who speaks, I don't care if you filled out a card, you have to fill out a card every time you speak. Okay, thank you.
Dan Carmody, 101 Walnut Street, Roswell, Georgia. I actually own a small business around the corner, which is Studio 7 Photography. Actually have been involved in the cottage school for about 15 years as their photographer and directly related to that, and just wanted to speak to the point of I actually have one of the kids in this program. I actually teach at the school as well, but have been involved with the state of Georgia sponsoring kids from the cottage school. So there's a much bigger picture in this entire impact of the school. These kids get to a certain point in high school, and that for some of these kids is the end of the road, and this program is kind of a segue into integrating into our community and them becoming part of who we are. And that's why I came up to speak to that point, because I actually have one of the former graduates of the cottage school as a full-time employee at my business, and want to further this program as he progresses in this to be able to hire more graduates. The Swift School was actually kind enough to let my studio become their photographer, and this graduate of the cottage school is now going to be the main overseer of the program for the Swift School. So we're basically hiring from within and giving these kids a future that is part of the Roswell community, as a part of leaving them to graduate from school and then giving them no options to go further. So this program, and participating with the state and me and the other people, I anticipate seeing these kids being able to find jobs in those careers, it being landscaping or whatever it is, that they can actually become part of the city and our community, which to me is incredible. And I just wanted to kind of throw that out there, that some people don't see the bigger picture and what the opportunities that this program is really providing the kids. So I can't speak to any of the other outside peripherals, but as to get a visual on how important the program is, I'm proud to be a part of it, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, and Mr. Howe, since you spoke 3 times, all I need to do is get your speaking card and make sure you put in all 3 that you spoke for, so we can have a record of that. We would appreciate it. Okay, applicant, do you have rebuttal? You have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Do you need me to restate my name? Okay. For the Honeycutt property, seeing all 6 cars, the carport is actually facing their house, and that's where 4 would be. But on the complete other side of the house, which is facing, I'm sorry, I don't have that like right in front of me, but the blue on this side, yes, on the other, that neighbor would be the one who saw the other 2 cars. They would not be visible from the Honeycutt property. Also, it appears that the Honeycutt's home is like up on a hill, so it wouldn't matter how tall you made something. Like, it would have to be like a full-grown tree for them to not be able to see onto the property, which is why we were thinking that cutting down trees to add like the big shrubs so that it would block their view wouldn't really block their view because of the position of where their house is currently located. I'd like to remind you that they're not students, they're clients, and they have graduated from high school, so they're 18 to 25, which would put them in a more mature age group, so they wouldn't be like trespassing or running around. There was a mention of a backhoe, but we would not have them using it. It would just be like lawnmowers and weed eaters and hedge clippers and shovels and things like that. They wouldn't be driving any large equipment or making any permanent changes to the landscape of the home. The fence along the back, we would be okay with that. I'm trying to make sure and the driveway, we would have to cut down several trees to be able to put a driveway from the cottage school up to the house, which would do more damage to the landscape than to have them come in and off of Grimes Bridge. And again, most of our clients don't drive, so we could have them dropped off at the cottage school and walk down the sidewalk if that were to become an issue.
Okay, is there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to now, is there anybody else that wants to speak? Okay, I'm going to close public hearing right now. Council. Okay, that's what I was supposed to ask you. Is there any more questions or comments for either staff or the applicant? Councilmember Diamond.
I guess Jackie or Brad, whichever one of you can give me an idea of, is there a fence height or length that might work in this garage screening process, given the topography and the length?
This is the area of the house. This is the existing driveway. These dimensions can be changed or in any manner. I generally started 20 or 200 feet from the front property line back to where you would start the fence. And if you make the fence 200 feet long, you bring it to the back behind the house. So, I mean, as little as probably 50 feet would probably cover the garage, but it's what you feel would be appropriate in that area. This is a photograph of the driveway going up. The red line is a general location of the property line. You can see there are mature trees. The Honeycutt's driveway is actually in this area as they go up to their house. This is a general location of carport. This is where two of the cars, so this fence would be somewhere generally in that location. Thanks, David.
Any other questions? Okay. Councilmember Price?
I have a question for staff. If this were used primarily for residential usage only, what would be the number of cars that would be allowed in the driveway or on the property?
4.
4 total?
Yes.
Like visible or in a carport as well? Or
Yes, 4.
Which?
4 total.
Including in out of view. Well, a carport's not out of view, but
4 total.
4 total. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I do have one, even though I'm not voting. There was a question about the maximum number of clients at one time at the house, and does that include inside, outside? So I'm assuming they can't have whatever number we decide on, that many inside, and then that plus outside. That is a total on the property itself. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, since I don't see any more questions or comments, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Diamond if you're ready to make your motion.
We'll see. I guess I'm not clear on if we do a fence, is that something we need to send through DRB? Is that something that staff and the neighbors could agree on as a condition?
I'm assuming that's the call of this council if we want this to go to DRB, because it's only for the fence and nothing else. Am I correct?
Yes.
So that's your call, Councilman Diamond.
Okay. I think everybody agrees the Cottage School does wonderful things. I've been acquainted with them and a lot of their family members for a long time. But I think, this is a family home, and I think we're trying in this adaptive reuse to keep that look and feel of a family home. So I think, moving a driveway or rearranging too many trees would do more to damage that than anything else. And having lived next to people with multiple kids and dogs, this seems like a really low-end use of this property compared to some of the places that I've lived as neighbors. So I would like to make a motion to start this out with, to approve this application with the following conditions. The hours of operation from 8 to 5. The maximum of clients and staff at any one time on the property is less than or equal to 10. The no more than 4 cars parked in the driveway. The applicant shall install a fence that is amenable to the property owner at 7:30 and staff on the southern end of the property to divide the Cottage School property from that homeowner. And also a fence shall be installed between, a barrier between the property so as to screen the driveway carport area from the 7:30 property owner. think I'm done.
Okay, that's a motion. Do I have a second? I'd like to have a second first, and then we'll go to questions and comments. I'm not going to ask you for anybody down here wants to second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. Now I will open up for questions and comments. Councilmember Depolito.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Question on the first condition. You had the hours of operation from 8 to 5. Was that Monday through Friday?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. And then as far as the fence along the shared property line, you said a fence or a barrier, which could you explain a little bit more detail?
I think we talked about a split rail type fence that would be amenable to both the homeowner and the staff.
Between the, I'm sorry.
You talking about the southern end or
the eastern?
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be more of a wood. Western.
I'm sorry,
yes.
it's western.
I'm envisioning, because of the topography, it'd have to be like a 6-foot wood fence. Is that?
We're talking split rail
Yeah.
fence in this location. Staff would probably recommend a 6-foot wet wood fence. Whatever length, please determine the length that would be allowable in that location.
And my additional question would be from the street up to the edge of the fence, there was some discussion of a hedge as well. What did your motion include?
I didn't address that. You can amend it if you would like. But bear in mind there's a lot of trees in there, so there is quite a bit of shade cover.
Okay, so your motion was just...
Yes, just for the fence.
Councilmember Price? I'm sorry, did you have another one? I'm sorry, another question?
No, I was just saying thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Councilmember Price?
I wanted to clarify that the fence barrier we're discussing now is only between the houses, not at the rear of the property of what is it, 740?
Yeah, and actually there were two different conditions. One was the one at the rear of the property, the southern side, and the other was in between the driveways.
Okay, so you're including both?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and I think staff would like to have a length of the fence by the carport. Councilmember Diamond. I think doesn't staff would like to have determination of that eastern fence. They'd like to have a length.
Okay, well, let's start with 200 feet and then we'll... I'm having trouble getting a read on the rest of the table here, so I'll start there.
Is that an amendment to your motion? Amendment to your motion to have to do it specified as 200 feet on the eastern end for the fencing?
Western.
The 200 feet that was identified on...
I mean western side, I'm sorry, western side.
The
East,
200,
west, north.
200 feet along the driveway that staff was showing?
Yes.
By the garage?
Yes.
That was part of your original motion, right?
No, there was no specified length, and
Oh.
staff would like to have a specified length, and
Right.
Councilmember Diamond said 200. I'm just getting, since you second.
Right.
Okay, you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councilmember Eichardt, did I see your hand? Or you're not for sure yet?
I was going to address those things. I think we've hit them now.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Price.
I would just say that I think 200 is a little too big. And also, it was clear, I think, from the neighbor that the rear of the property was not critical to him. So I don't know that we should require it if the neighbor's not that interested, and maybe it would be optional on the part of the school.
Okay. Councilmember Diamond, would you like to address that, please?
Well, this came from multiple discussions, I think, over the years about having kids mistake the barriers of the cottage school property, and we weren't talking about, a large barrier fence, but I think I heard the homeowner express interest in having some kind of defined area to show where the property line is.
Okay, any other questions? Any other comments? Okay. Councilmember Diamond, Price, let's go ahead and get you finished, and then we'll...
Is it possible to ask the neighbor to clarify? Because I thought I heard him say something different this
Mr.
evening.
Honeycutt, would you come to the microphone for me, please? Councilmember Price would like to have a clarification on the southern end, the barrier. Is that something that that is a deal breaker, or how do you feel about that? Since we're talking about two different separate fences.
I think it could be very simple, actually. It could be something as simple as a post with 3 rails, from one post to the other. That's what comes to my mind.
So
for this.
You want a defined line, property line. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Councilmember Iverhart.
Just had a question for staff really on those now condition 4 and 5, the fences. Is that sufficient for you to accomplish what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Diamond? Nothing? Okay, so we have a motion and a second with the following conditions: 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, 10 people, no more than 4 cars, 200-foot some type of barrier on the western side, and some type of barrier on the southern end to just do a definition of the property line. Now, I'm going to ask City Administrator, do we have, or Attorney, do we have to put down that this does not have to go to the DRB in the motion?
That would clarify things for staff. Yes, that would be good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the some type of was, on the southern end, was kind of a split rail, natural barrier, and the other was a wood 6-foot fence.
Okay, do I have an amendment to say that this does not have to go to the DRB, or a clarification? Is that okay with you, Councilmember Orleans? Okay, thank you. Okay, one more question, then we're going. Councilmember Price.
I guess I fail to see why the fence at the rear of the property is critical, because the abutting of your property with the school has always been there. The fact that this is being asked to be, a different use of the home adjacent to you without students. They're not students coming from the school to there that will be cutting through. They're going to be coming from the road. Is that right?
At that point, there is a middle school classroom that's located on the property, and so that over a period of many years, there has been this problem with trespassing. I will say that in the last year, that we haven't seen much, but this was only because we ourselves installed posts there to mark this lot, and it was all we could do really at that time, and it's not very well defined what we have there. And I'm thinking just in the future, now it's defined well enough in the sense that we have made this effort. There's been no effort on the part of the cottage school to observe this line. So I think it would be partly on them as well to assume responsibility for observing some kind of way to designate where their property ends and ours begins.
Thank you, Mr. Honeycutt. Okay, a fast one.
Sorry. I thought I read or heard that the applicant actually was amenable to that from the beginning. Did I miss something in there? Or is that okay?
We're fine.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second with all the conditions that we read, including the not having to go to the DRB. All in favor? Councilmember? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. We appreciate it. Okay, we're going to go to the next one. Councilmember Diamond?
Okay, this is RZ 1204, CV 1201, 9050 Nesbit Ferry Road, Dane Nesbit, land lot 835. This is presented by Mr. Townsend.
Thank you very much, Councilman Diamond. This is a proposed rezoning with conditional variances along 9050 Nesbit Ferry Road. We received a letter requesting deferral of this application to the June 2012 meeting. Do you wish me to go through the presentation this evening?
I don't think that's necessary. Do you?
Okay.
Does anybody want him to go through the presentation? Okay. But I know there's some people here on this case, and what I would like to do before we make a motion and a second for deferral is anybody wants to speak on this case. If we do defer it, then you do have the opportunity on June 11th to be able to speak for this, for either for or opposed to this case. Does anybody want to speak at this time? Going once, going twice. Okay, I'm closing public hearing then. Councilmember Diamond.
Move to defer to June 11th.
I have a motion for deferral. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Depolito. Any more comments or questions from council? All in favor? Passes unanimously. It will be heard again on June 11th, 2012. Thank you for all that came tonight. Councilmember Diamond.
Next item is PV 1201 variance for 1140 Grace Hill Drive, Frank Pritchard, Pritchard Building Group, LLC, land lot 355. Mr. Townsend.
Yes, this is a Parkway Village variance. As part of development in the Parkway Village, any residential development adjacent to a residential development has a 60-foot buffer setback. As you can see, the existing home has an existing deck. This is a existing situation. They came in for a permit for a proposed sunroom, expand the deck, and an additional stone patio that would encroach into the 50-foot or the 60-foot setback at 52 feet. This is a proposed variance that is for this development. Staff included a recommended condition dealing with the plans that have been received. We have not received any phone calls or emails related to the surrounding area and its impact. Staff would recommend approval of the proposed variance if they have any questions.
Any questions of staff? Councilmember Price?
Were the adjacent neighbors notified?
Yes.
Thank you.
Property was also posted.
Any other questions or comments from staff? Councilmember Depolito?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. As far as the notification, the most impacted property owners are along Brook Valley Drive. Did they receive a copy of a plat, or were they just sent a letter that...
They're sent the standard postcard with information to contact the city if they have more questions. We did not send out a identify how the property was going to be changed to those homeowners now.
But it was clearly identified as the property behind them that
yes.
was requesting a variance?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm not going to open up for public hearing. Is the applicant here? If you'd like to come speak, you're more than welcome. Please give your name and your address, please.
My name is Frank Pritchard. I'm at 25 Serendipity Way in Sandy Springs, and I'm here to answer any questions should they come up. I represent the Breedalls.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there any questions for the applicant? No, sir. It doesn't look like it. Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak on this? Okay, I'm closing public hearing, and I'm turning it over to Councilmember Diamond.
I'd like to move for approval with the one staff recommendation, subject to the site stamped, received April 6, 2012, Community Development Department, titled Lot 15, Grace Hill.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Second from Councilmember Orleans. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Next one.
Next one is approval of a resolution to adopt the annual license fee for farmers market. Mr. Townsend.
With the adoption of the ordinance to allow for farmers markets, staff has included a resolution for the annual fee of $150 due upon initial issuance of that location for a farmers market. Staff would recommend approval.
Okay, is there any questions of staff? Okay, I'm going to open it up to the public. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment on this resolution? Seeing none, I'm closing the public hearing. Councilmember Diamond.
Move to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Is there any other questions or comments? All in favor? Okay, we have Councilmembers DePolito, Diamond, Eichelhardt, and Orleans. All opposed? Councilmember Price. Thank you for that, and I think that finishes our community development. We now move to recreation and parks, and that's Councilmember Jerry Orleans.
Thank you. The only item on the agenda tonight for Parks and Rec is approval from the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a contract with Roswell Bikes for bike rental and concessions in Don White Memorial Park. Before we get into discussion, if anybody has any questions on it, Joe is here. Joe Glover is here to answer any questions. But basically, I have some questions on the contract and would like to move it to our committee meeting tomorrow evening.
So you're asking to move it, to defer this to the committee meeting on Tuesday night?
That'll be my motion, yes.
Okay, I have a motion to defer till Tuesday night's committee meeting. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember DePolito. Are there any questions or comments? Before I do that, anybody in the public would like to speak on this deferral or this issue? Okay. All in favor of deferral? I'm sorry. Councilmember Price.
That's not for action, though, tomorrow, just for discussion?
It would be to discuss to either kill it or bring it forward to the next committee.
Right. It would come back to this body.
Correct. It would come back next meeting.
Thank you.
But get some direction tomorrow instead of tonight.
Okay. So since I have no comments, all in favor of the deferral? Okay, it passes unanimously. I'm going to now turn it over to City Attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The only item I have is a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel and acquisition of real estate.
Do I have a motion? By Councilmember DePolito, second. Councilmember Price. Any other questions? All in favor? Thank you. We do have a work session in room 220. And the work session is going to be on sidewalk connectivity. It's a review of the concept for our transportation master plan if anyone is interested. Thank you.